Hello and welcome to the Ahead of the Game podcast. I'm your host, James Oxford, and today I have Pete Toal and Mathew Miller joining me to talk about the New Orleans Pelicans. Before we dive in, I'm going to ask you, the listeners, for a huge favor. Go ahead and click that like button, subscribe to the channel, and if you're feeling real generous, go share it on social media. Now, let's start by looking at what the Pelicans did to their roster during the offseason. The biggest addition was obviously DeJounte Murray, and he will, of course, play a huge role for the team, but perhaps even more pivotal for this team is what they lost, and that's Jonas Valanciunas and to a lesser extent Larry Nance Jr. They did bring in Daniel Tice, who I suspect will get the nod at the starting center spot, along with Yves Missi, who may be ready for a backup role in his rookie season, but that's remains to be seen. But are we seeing a team that may be ready to lean in a little bit heavier to the Zion Williamson lineups and kind of abandon what some of these other teams in the West are doing, getting bigger? Mathew, I'm going to swing it to you first. What do you think?
I think that's actually a real possibility to where like you may see some games, I guess, depending on matchups, where they may just start Zion at the five, and it's all kind of going to depend on I don't think they're going to be able to move BI at this point yet, maybe close to the deadline. But then what do you do? You've got DeJounte Murray. What do you do with CJ? I think you move him off the bench, bring him off the bench because you have to start Herb. You cannot bring Herb off the bench. And then, so when you do that, now maybe so you would have DeJounte at the one, Herb the two, BI would be the three. And if you go with Zion at the five, then you can start Trey Murphy the third, who he should be starting anyways, because I'm a big fan, but he's awesome.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I think talking about Herb has to start, Trey Murphy, a lot of people feel he should start. Pete, where is your head at regarding that?
I think you obviously with Tice, the basically with the Olympics in Germany, show that he could still play. A lot of people were like kind of questioning, like, okay, well, he took a backup role with the Clippers, and like, is he really an upgrade? I think you do get an upgrade in him in that he can stretch out to the 3 point line, shoot it. Don't forget, I know you have Misi, that's the rookie, but don't forget you have Carlo Matkovic, who was their previous second round draft pick, who was in the G League for the squadron last year. He showed a lot of promise last year. You also had Trey Jemison, who played on the Grizzlies last year, who's kind of that rugged, traditional center that they can throw in there for some minutes as well. I do like Matt said, the ability to play Zion as a small ball five in some lineups. Matt and I are both fans of Trey Murphy, his ability to kind of stretch the floor from three, shoot off the dribble a little bit. He's got to get better at that, though. Ultimately, if you're the Pelicans, you want to eventually get something of value for Brandon Ingram and kind of clean up that basically the lineup, because don't know how long CJ McCollum is going to like coming off the bench as the sixth man per se. So we'll have to see there. But I do like the platoon center rather than having Valanciunas, who often got beat in isolation defense. So we'll see.
Yeah, I think there is something to be said about just when you don't have the pressure of, oh, we have Valanciunas, so we have to start him. It does kind of let you be a little more creative, as Matt referred or referenced earlier, where maybe there are some matchups where they could start Zion Williamson at the five, and then either you're solving the CJ problem of is CJ starting, or you're getting Trey Murphy in there. One of the two. I think DeJounte, I think for sure is a starter. We can agree with that, right? Zion
Mhm.
probably for sure is a starter. Ingram. CJ is definitely an expensive sixth man. He's set to get
Yes.
paid a third of a half million or a third of 100 million. I'm sorry, a third of 100 million this year. So he is definitely going to be one of the more expensive six men if he's coming off the bench, which I don't think they want to do. What are some possible destinations for Ingram, though? Because I know the Rockets were floated earlier this offseason. That's certainly not something that I was looking forward to as a Rockets fan. There's definitely other ways I'd like to use our assets. So, as far as destinations for Ingram, are there any obvious ones, or is it something we'll just have to wait and see where something will open up as teams get into the regular season?
You want to take him out, or you want me
Yeah,
to go?
the first thing that pops in my head is the Detroit Pistons. They want to get actual NBA players. Maybe you like. I don't think you get. I don't think they're going to trade Duran just yet. He'd be a guy you look at, but maybe you can get Beef Stew, Isaiah Stewart there. He can stretch the floor, plays hard. You'd probably have to throw in a couple guys here just to match salaries and stuff. Hell, maybe I don't think they can yet. They can't take. They couldn't take trade Tim Hardaway Jr. back yet, could they, Pete?
No, because Hardaway, you would have to wait till what, December,
Okay.
December
So
deadline to be able to take him back.
maybe that's the move then. Wait till December and you take him back just for salary purposes. Just another shooter off the bench for New Orleans if that's what they did. But Detroit would be like the first place I would look. Just because I know, I mean, they just signed Tobias Harris. They want actual basketball players there to pair with Cade.
I would look at Brooklyn if I was the
Mm.
Pelicans. You could potentially get a pick. You could get some filler salary, whether it's Dorian Finney-Smith, if they were willing to come off. Finney-Smith can play a variety of roles for the Pelicans, kind of off the bench. He's a veteran for the locker room that could help. If you're advantageous, you ask for Cam Johnson, but I don't think that you're going to get Cam Johnson in that. And you got the shooting of Trey Murphy. But I think if you look at Brooklyn, they would take on Ingram because you do have Jordy Fernandez as a first-time head coach. That kind of gives them a go-to guy because right now, really, their only, I guess, big money guy is Nick Claxton. So it's kind of like, because I don't count Ben Simmons. He's not going to give you a lot. Now, if you really want to say play hardball, you could make New Orleans take the expiring contract to Simmons. If you really wanted to do that, that's an option. And then
Maybe he'd be motivated then to play since he'd be on a good team.
yeah, well, we'll see.
That's a speculation you can have. Pelicans
Um,
can't feel good about that speculation.
if
No.
it was me, I would have dealt with Cleveland, but obviously that window's closed now because Mobley and Allen are basically signed to long-term deals. They're not going to go anywhere. They want to see if they can win with Donovan Mitchell. But I mean, outside of that, it's really hard to envision a lot of teams going after him because you got to think Ingram not only gets traded there, they have to look to basically bring him back if they're going to send out any assets. Otherwise, it's just a dump and you're not going to get anything back if you're the Pelicans. Then you got to start pointing fingers at David Griffin. Like, did you wait too long? This is the second time that you waited too long, with things as far as, being a GM or president of basketball operations. So it's kind of like, Gail Benson, you might be older, but you still got to look at what's in front of you that the Pelicans are just treading water at this point.
That is a great point you make. Do GMs obviously make rash decisions when they think their job's on the line? Definitely. Definitely. Uh, it'd be a shame because I think they actually have a pretty like solid core here. There are some obvious money concerns, but as far as long-term money concerns, you're really talking CJ has this year and next year. DeJounte has this year and two more, which is a little bit longer than you may want, but his fit next to Zion, I think, actually could be outstanding. I think I'm really high on that, especially as you mentioned, Pete, with Daniel Tice out there stretching the floor. You might as well have Zion playing the five offensively at that point, realistically. So that is something I definitely think that it would be a shame if the GM feels the pressure of, hey, I got to do something so I don't look like I lost out on nothing on this asset.
Mm-hmm.
But realistically, sometimes the best option for your team is just saying, "Hey, we just got to let this guy go," And we figure we have Herb Jones, we got Trey Murphy, Hawkins is pretty promising. I think last season he looked like he is going to be a shooter. He was a decent, I think, league average shooter last year. I think he's going to be much better than that as we get into his career. So it could just be, in my opinion, that Brandon Ingram plays out this season and you let him go, and that's just the
Kind
end
of
of
like
it.
addition by subtraction almost.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, addition or maybe even just staying level. I think that Ingram could be an addition for some teams. He could be a subtraction for some teams. It depends if you have other bodies to pick up the shots. He's obviously like sometimes an efficient player, but oftentimes you're not counting on him for the most efficient offense, right? So
Yes.
replacing that type of offense is a little bit easier, but still tough shots is what he's taking. Not everyone's equipped to take those tough shots either.
But he forces himself into those tough shots, and that's been the issue. That's where I think overall, if you're the Pelicans, you got to look at where you stand as far as the playoff race come the trade deadline. Hey, we might have to dump this guy for less than we really wanted to, but it might help us in the long term as far as moving the ball around. Because if you look at the problem that DeJounte Murray and Trae Young had, your turn, my turn, I don't really know where I fit. I worry DeJounte and Brandon Ingram will run into that same thing because DeJounte Murray's is most effective playing pick and roll with the ball in his hands. not necessarily a scorer, but a playmaker. Brandon Ingram often ball stops into isolation. That takes the ability to spread the floor because DeJounte Murray is not really a, off the dribble shooter or anybody that's going to kind of spot up and shoot. So it takes that away. It's like, then he's just standing. So you got all these guys just standing and ball watching, and that's what you don't want. Whereas if you had Trey Murphy in there, he has the versatility enough to shoot off the dribble and make teams pay because he's so lethal from 3-point.
Matt, where is your head at as far as kind of what we're talking about with DeJounte Murray affecting the offense?
I think if him and Bi are probably they're going to clash, just the styles of play of Bi and DeJounte Murray. So I think it's best at some point for Bi to be on his way out. And what I find what could be nice for the Pelicans too is if you get because you might have the clash there, but now you have Murray on a team that has a chance to play for something. Will this motivate him again to be the defensive player that he once was? Because I think he's more of a good defensive player on reputation only right now. He has not been good defensively the last few years. And if you look, he hasn't really been playing for any. He's been on bad teams that had no chance. So maybe this gets him going defensively and all that good stuff. So that would be another reason to move on from Bi and shoot. If all you get is just the other team sends back a little salary just to match and like a second round pick, like you just might have to do it because you have the guys to come in and, like you said, Jordan Hawkins, like Trey gets the start now. You've got Jordan Hawkins now who's going to get minutes because he's not blocked anymore by Dyson Daniels, who went to Atlanta in the move. So there's a clear role. If Bi is not on the ball club, there's a clear role for Jordan Hawkins now, who I think at this point he's not going to play. He probably won't play much. There might not be a lot of minutes for him.
Yeah, and they have other guys that obviously are able to contribute for good teams like Jose Alvarado also, who is going to, there's going to be battles on the depth chart. I think, though, DeJounte is going to help everybody besides Ingram on the roster. He's the kind of guy they were missing, some guy who, like Pete said, he's not necessarily looking to score in the pick and roll. He absolutely can if you don't pay attention to him, but his primary focus when he was on the Spurs was, hey, I'm setting up my teammates. He obviously got away with that a little bit with the Hawks because, when the ball is in Trae Young's hands as much as it was, I'm sure when he does get the ball in his hands, he's, anxious to not give it away quite so quickly. But yeah, I think that besides Ingram, DeJounte is going to be a really good presence for this team, both sides of the ball, because I do think he's going to pick up the defensive side of the ball. We've seen he can do it, and why wouldn't he, given he's got a lot to play for in this situation?
Yes.
All right. Looking at where they're kind of projected for this season, the Vegas line, let me pull it up, that I saw had them at 45.5 wins. It's actually a little bit rich for my blood. I had them at the 42 and 40 mark, just above 500. I think they're going to take a little bit of a setback this season just because they had a really good health from Zion Williams. And I'm not sure you can expect that many games every season from Zion. I hope I'm wrong about that because he's a super fun player to watch, but it's hard for me to really kind of get confident that he's going to be there for 60 plus games again. Matt, where's your head at as far as their win total?
It kind of does come down to Zion in his the amount of games he played. He played 70 last year. And the other time I think he played, like 62 games in 2021, but it was like a 72 game season. So about the same. So he's done it twice, but that's kind of the thing. And what happens with Bi. So I'm probably with you for, 43, 44 wins. Now, if they can get rid of Bi and you get Zion for 70 games again, then you're looking at a team who could win 50 because they are deep and talented. And they have what everybody wants. They have depth at those wing spots who can guard and shoot.
Yeah, I agree with that. Go ahead, Pete.
I'm a little different than both of you guys, and Matt's probably surprised because I'm always not the most Pelicans friendly guy, but I have to look at Denver didn't really improve and they actually lost KCP, so they're going to drop in wins, I think. Yeah. You have the Clippers losing Paul George, they're going to drop in wins. So that's two teams right there that drop in wins, which means two teams have to go up. My two teams going up are the Memphis Grizzlies because they're going to be healthy with John Morant back, Desmond Bain and company, and the Pelicans. I think that DeJounte Murray is going to make that big of a difference because now you're shifting CJ McCollum back to a score first role coming off the bench, and that's going to help them kind of get a little bit better identity. Now, the key, like I said, is going to be what can they get out of Brandon Ingram for the first half of the year as they decide what to do at the trade deadline. Then the health of Zion, of course, and it all has to work well with Trey Murphy taking a jump again, and then you get something out of the platoon at center. If all that kind of falters, the platoon at center, Murphy not doing as well, Murray and Ingram, struggling, then I could see 45 wins. I have them at 48 wins right now. That's where I got them earmarked for.
I am shocked.
Yeah, I got 48.
Hammer the over.
I'm a little higher on them than most.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Normally, I'm the one too high on the Pelicans.
He makes good points. I'm not as confident in the center platoon, but he does make good points. So, I mean, it's hard for me to take fault in that. And I think if you're, again, confident in the health of the team, it's not far-fetched by any means.
Mm-hmm. And also, is Herb Jones going to shoot as well from three again as he did last? Because I think, let me look real quick. What was he last year from three? He was close. He might have been close to 40.
I think it was 41, if I'm not
41
mistaken.
Yeah, he was 41.8, about 42%, which is that sustainable? I think it is because he's the guy who works hard. So I think it is sustainable. Like, he is a true 3-and-D guy. And, like, he's got that, like, Drew Holiday type impact defensively.
I don't know if I'd go as far as Drew Holiday, but I definitely like Herb. He's a really good player. I really like him. One thing we hadn't touched on that I did want to touch on real quick, losing Najee Marshall is going to hurt as a wing off the bench that's versatile defensively. And they've got to figure out how they're going to make that up because I love Jordan Hawkins, huge Jordan Hawkins fan, but defensively he is a nightmare right now. So they've got to figure out what they're going to get, off the bench, defensively. They do have shooting, obviously Matt Ryan and stuff like that, but I need them to stop somebody off the bench, to kind of give a different look there. We'll see what happens because Dyson Daniels and Marshall being gone is a big blow defensively there.
Yeah, they did get a lot out of Najee offensively, even though I think they maybe weren't expecting. He shot 39%, only 150 total attempts in 66 games. So not like pouring them in, but at that rate, you don't need a high volume to really be effective. So he's going to be a big loss too. I absolutely agree. I think they do have the tools to kind of fill those holes. Herb is a guy, again, that is really versatile. Trey Murphy, y'all both love him, and so do I. He's a guy who, again, versatile. His offensive game is growing, but defensively, I'm pretty confident Trey Murphy's someone who can expand his, I'll say, ability to impact the game.
Yes, he kind of has that. I kind of compare him to, like, they're not the same player, but kind of what Aaron Gordon did for Denver. He unlocked so many things. Trey Murphy does that for the Pelicans. He's like their cheat code in a way when he's healthy and he's getting the minutes, like, because he does so much for them. He's got, as we saw in the dunk contest, the guy has sneaky bounce too. Like, he'll dunk on you.
And I'll say that the Nuggets wish that Gordon was the shooter that Trey Murphy is.
Exactly. Yes. I think Gordon's probably
is outstanding.
Gordon's a little more versatile defensive player, I think, but offensively, I'd give me Trey Murphy.
But I don't think that's something where Trey can't get to. Again, he just had his age 23 season. Like, he's still growing as a player, offensively and defensively, and he's already a player that all of us probably feel confident that he can play a role on a championship team, right?
Yes. Absolutely.
Yeah, so I think
I'm as high on him as you are, Tari Eason.
Oh, that is pretty high, man. Wow,
he is my Tari Eason.
All right.
I love Tari Eason. I think he's going to have a big year this year.
Well, I got some hate a couple weeks ago. I said he was more valuable than Jalen Green, and some of the Rockets fans didn't like that.
That is crazy because I'm not a Jalen Green guy. I don't think he's that valuable to the team.
Me either. But anyways, don't want to get too off topic with the Pelicans. Do you have anything else you want to touch on before we wrap this episode up?
No, I think we covered a good bit.
Great. Well, Everyone, thank you for listening to this week's episode of the Ahead of the Game podcast. Again, we had Mathew Miller and Pete Toal here talking about the New Orleans Pelicans. Make sure you like the channel. Subscribe to the channel, like the video, and if you're feeling real generous and you've got to this point in the video, go ahead and share it out because you know you liked it and someone else will as well. Thank you very much.